Kierkegaard, the first existentialist, from Existentialism by Walter Kaufmann. 1. On his mission. It is now about 4 years ago that I got the notion of wanting to try my luck as an author. I remember it quite clearly. It was on a Sunday, yes, that's it, a Sunday afternoon. I was seated as usual out of doors at the cafe in the Fredericksburg Garden. I had been a student for half a score of years. Although never lazy, all my activity nevertheless was like a glittering inactivity, a kind of occupation for which I still have a great partiality, and for which perhaps I even have a little genius. I read much. I read much, spent the remainder of the day idling and thinking, or thinking and idling, but that was all it came to. So there I sat and smoked my cigar until I lapsed into thought. Among other thoughts, I remember these. You are going on, I said to myself, to become an old man without being anything, and without really undertaking to do anything. On the other hand, wherever you look about you, in literature and in life, you see the celebrated names and figures, the precious and much heralded men who are coming into prominence and are much talked about, the many benefactors of the age who know how to benefit mankind by making life easier and easier, some by railways, others by omnibuses and steamboats, others by the telegraph, others by easily apprehended compendiums and short recitals of everything worth knowing, and finally the true benefactors of the age who make spiritual existence and virtue and thought easier and easier, yet more and more significant. And what are you doing? Here my soliloquy was interrupted, for my cigar was smoked out, and a new one had to be lit. So I smoked again, and then suddenly this thought flashed through my mind. You must do something, but inasmuch as with your limited capacities it will be impossible to make anything easier than it has become, you must, with the same humanitarian enthusiasm as the others, undertake to make something harder. This notion pleased me immensely, and at the same time it flattered me to think that I, like the rest of them, would be loved and esteemed by the whole community. For when all combine in every way to make everything easier, there remains only one possible danger, namely that the ease becomes so great that it becomes altogether too great. Then there is only one want left, though it is not yet a felt want, when people will want difficulty. Out of love for mankind and out of despair at my embarrassing situation, seeing that I had accomplished nothing and was unable to make anything easier than it had already been made, and moved by a genuine interest in those who make everything easy, I conceived it as my task to create difficulties everywhere. So then, I am striving towards the exalted goal of being hailed with acclamation, unless possibly I am derided or maybe crucified. For it is quite certain that every man who shouts bravo shouts also periat, if not crucify, and that even without being untrue to his character, since on the contrary he remains true to himself, qua shouter. But even though my effort be misunderstood, I am convinced nevertheless that it is just as noble as that of the others. When at banquet where the guests have already overeaten, one person is concerned about bringing on new courses, another about having a vomitive at hand, it is perhaps perfectly true that only the first has interpreted correctly the requirement of the guests. But I wonder whether the other might not also say that he is concerned about what the requirement might be. 2. On his works. What does all this come to when the reader puts together the points dwelt upon in the foregoing paragraphs? It means that this is a literary work, in which the whole thought is the task of becoming a Christian. but it is a literary work which understood from the very first and consistently followed out the implication of the fact that the situation is Christendom, a reflective modification, and hence transformed into reflection all the relationships of Christianity. To become a Christian in Christendom means either to become what one is, the inwardness of reflection, or to become inward through reflection, or it means that the first thing is to be disengaged from the toils of one's illusion, which again is a reflective modification. Here there is no room for vacillation or ambiguity of the sort one commonly experiences elsewhere when one does not know and cannot make out whether one is situated in paganism, whether the parson is a missionary in that sense, or whereabouts one is. Here one does not miss what is generally lacking vis-a-vis a decisive categorical definition and a decisive expression for the situation to preach Christianity in Christendom. Everything is put in terms of reflection. The communication is qualified by reflection, hence it is indirect communication. The communicator is characterized by reflection, therefore he is negative, not one who says that he is himself a Christian in an extraordinary degree, or even lays claim to revelations, all of which answers to immediacy and direct communication, but on the contrary, one who even affirms that he is not a Christian. That is to say, the communicator stands behind the other man, helping him negatively, for whether he actually succeeds in helping someone is another question. The problem itself is a problem of reflection, to become a Christian when one is a Christian of a sort. Martin Heidegger. What is metaphysics? What is metaphysics? The question leads one to expect a discussion about metaphysics. Such is not our intention. Instead, we shall discuss a definite metaphysical question, thus, as it will appear, landing ourselves straight into metaphysics. Only in this way can we make it really possible for metaphysics to speak for itself. Our project begins with the presentation of a metaphysical question, then goes on to its development and ends with its answer. Seen from the point of view of sound common sense, philosophy, according to Hegel, is the world stood on its head. The world stood on its head. Hence, the peculiar nature of our task calls for some preliminary definition. This arises out of the dual nature of metaphysical questioning. Firstly, every metaphysical question always covers the whole range of metaphysical problems. In every case, it is itself the whole. Secondly, every metaphysical question can only be put in such a way that the questioner as such is by his very questioning involved in the question. From this we derive the following point. Metaphysical questioning has to be put as a whole and has always to be based on the essential situation of existence, which puts the question. We question here and now on our own account our existence. A community of scientists, teachers, and students is ruled by science. What essential things are happening to us in the foundations of our existence now that science has become our passion? The fields of the sciences lie far apart. Their methodologies are fundamentally different. This disrupted multiplicity of disciplines is today only held together by the technical organization of the universities and their faculties, and maintained as a unit of meaning by the practical aims of those faculties. As against this, however, the root of the sciences in their essential ground has atrophied. And yet, insofar as we follow their most specific intentions, in all the sciences we are related to what is. Precisely from the point of view of the sciences, no field takes precedence over another, neither nature over history, nor vice versa. No one methodology is superior to another. Mathematical knowledge is no stricter than philological or historical knowledge. It is merely the characteristics of exactness, which is not to be identified with strictness. To demand exactitude of history would be to offend against the idea of the kind of strictness that pertains to the humanistic sciences. The world relationship which runs through all the sciences as such constrains them to seek what is in itself, with a view to rendering it according to its quiddity and its modality, an object of investigation and basic definition. What the sciences sciences accomplish, ideally speaking, is an approximation to the essential nature of all things.